As business owners,
What in the holy computers, man? Computers. Fuck the intro. Fuck the intro. Uh, how's everybody doing? Welcome to another episode of Burn and Return. My name is Matt. Sometimes I go by the Grass Factor. Actually, I don't. I don't go by Matt the Grass Factor Martin, and I don't do it in song either.
I
don't know why I do
totally
that.
every time I hear that you're going to a big business meeting or anything like that, I fully believe that's how you introduce yourself. Or if your business partner John Borden is introducing you, he actually points to you for the sound effect, and you just do it on command. And this is my business partner. We'll get it on tape.
Martin! Man, look. So it's funny that the contrast between my business partner and myself is quite significant, and it's funny when people will ask in a meeting. They'll be like, "Yeah, hey, John, so tell me a little bit about your business," and he'll be like, "Yeah, so we got started. Matt, how about you tell him?" He knows he knows I have no problem talking entirely too much, and so it's hilarious because he'll always come out with this real high degree of confidence, like, "Oh yeah, man, it's a wild story. We got started. I guess about 7 years ago we started working together. Matt, go ahead and tell them the story." It was like strong start and then immediate handoff. I was like, man, that's a quarterback right there. That's a quarterback right there. Now I'm gonna ram it in the hole.
Yeah.
Anyway, gentlemen, how the hell are y'all doing? Let's get this
Doing
out.
great.
How are y'all doing? Yeah, everything good?
Great.
Yeah, great.
Great.
I'm
Appreciate
feeling
the
great.
discussion.
I'm
Really
looking.
got me tuned up for tonight. Feeling good.
How cold is it there today?
Oh gosh, it was like 49 today, 50. Not bad at all. Very un-Canada-like. I think I saw 55 degrees for Christmas Day up here. So I will undoubtedly take those new silk boxers out, probably wear them out with no shirt or nothing else on, and get a little air to the boys.
Man, I'll say this, that daytime temps have been fine here, but I have been less than impressed with the sub 32-degree mornings. I'm not gonna lie, we've had way too many of them. JPEG, it's been a shit ton, hasn't it? I mean, it's like
ridiculous.
Yeah, way too many. Way too many. But
Time to move
daytime,
to Florida, Matt.
it's not terrible.
You don't have to worry about the hill people
Don't
anymore.
tell me.
You just have to worry about Florida
You know,
people.
Florida man, right? I don't know. I think if I survived Memphis, and then I mean, I got a bullet hole to prove it, right? Uh, I survived the hill people. I mean, I've been shanked. I've been beat over the head with beer bottles and pool cues and all kinds of fun things. I mean, Florida man is what, a face eater? What left do I have to encounter? I mean, can it really be that
Hey.
much worse?
It can't be worse, Matt. It cannot be
Right?
worse at all because to
What, a
me,
shark? I'm not gonna
yeah,
swim
a
in the
shark.
ocean.
Yeah, because to me, what if I told you that the idea of Florida man is really not frightening to me? It's not. Florida man doesn't scare me.
I'm not gonna lie, me neither.
Yeah.
At this point, I will say that yeah, I'm not worried about Florida man. But I'll tell you what I am worried about. I am worried about this week's headlines. I almost said burns. I would have been wrong. Look, this is what we call par for the course. Okay, when you do things live, you get a run where everything works perfectly, and then it comes back. You gotta
And my
you got
sounder for fuck it, we'll do it live did not work.
It is Murphy's Law. Look, the timer's not even working. It's all over the place. This happens. This is what happens when you do it live. And if y'all have a problem with it, I'm sure I can pin up some energy, and I'll just scream at you at the end of the episode. Then everybody will feel better about themselves. Let's start here. Biopesticides are harmless to mammals. Woo! Did y'all hear that? Biopesticides are harmless to mammals, but turns out they wipe out colonies of wasps. Is that a good thing? Well, I don't know. Let's see.
Mm-mm.
Some wasp and bees are able to recognize sick nestmates by smell and can prevent their entry into the nest to avert infection of the entire colony, assuring its survival, that of the species in the long run. This study, supported by FAPESP, I'm not gonna lie, I just wanted to read it that way. By FAPESP and described in an article published in the Journal of Environmental Science and Pollution Research, shows that this recognition does not happen in paper wasp, but the species is infected by a biopesticide based on the fungus Beavis bassiana and Butthead. The group of authors, led by researchers at the University of Sao Paulo's Ribeirão Preto School of Philosophy, Sciences, and Letters. That is, look at all this. The FFCLRP, USP, in Brazil, determined through molecular, survival, and behavioral assays that the biopesticide kills wasps, which benefit plants by feeding on pests and performing pollination. They also confirmed that wasps infected by the substance are not detected by nestmates. The authors include scientists affiliated with another university and the Federal University in other part of Brazil. The synthetic insecticide based on imidacloprid kills in 24 hours and can quickly wipe out entire wasp colonies. The biopesticide is less lethal initially, but kills over a period of 19 days, potentially infecting all the insects in a colony and threatening the long-term
Mm.
survival of the species. Jesus.
Mm.
The biopesticide has an advantage over synthetic insecticide, that it contains spores of the fungus Beavis butthead, which infects only insects, sparing mammals and other animals. The synthetic pesticide tested by the researchers is one of the most widely used and toxic to mammals. It is hazardous to humans if not properly. I'm not going to go down the line here, but I think anybody can look at this and see what is really going on here, right? With any good, there comes a certain degree of risk, and the risk becomes, right. Okay, hey, we have this biopesticide that is quite efficacious in at managing pest populations. However, due to its duration, residual control, ability to spread, though it is not toxic to mammals, it does threaten the entire species.
Yeah. Just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Just
more
takes a little
thorough
longer.
that way.
You
The
know,
delayed
Yes,
effect, yeah, it's
yeah,
it's
it's very
better.
thorough. Think of this as how to introduce the plague to insects.
yeah, I was just gonna say that it's
Now,
this is the bubonic plague versus the massive meteor, right? You know,
yeah,
imidacloprid's the meteor that, will probably kill most everybody in a pretty quick order, and then, the people that will slowly, die out over time because of, the sun not being able to shine through and, you know, uh,
yeah, yeah.
whatever.
This is like the
Death talk,
plague
really.
because my question is, because I recognize this fungal pathogen as something that is widely promoted as a substitute for the older pesticides because supposedly it is less toxic. But here's my question: bee behavior and wasp behavior is very similar, right? So, is this part of the piece of what is wiping out bee colonies as well? Because I know that this species of fungus is very widely used within the United States as well.
Ooh, really?
It is. Yeah, Matt, this is very widely used
Oh,
because this is promoted as a less toxic alternative to the neonics, organophosphates, and carbamates and pyrethroids.
you don't
And
say.
yeah, this is
Well,
because you see, going back to what Ryan is saying is that I remember in the old days, the organophosphates and carbamates did have this property of killing bees and wasps on contact, but never did I hear of an instance where a little bit of this pesticide would get into a colony and essentially eliminate the entire population over a large area, like how releasing, say, plague or COVID over an area would cause. I mean, I've never heard of this before because, and you know what? This is news to me. This is real news to me because I was under the impression that this myco-insecticide, which is what it's called, was selective. Apparently, it's not as selective as they say it is.
Mm.
Okay. Real quick, Demay, before you give
Mhm.
your I just wanna read this real quick. Beavis and Butthead, Bassian, I have no idea how to say this anyway, but it's funnier that way. It's considered safe for beneficial insects. This is from LSU Ag Research, by the way, Ag Center. Although it is recommended to avoid spraying directly in areas where bees are actively foraging. Safe for beneficial insects, don't spray bees directly. If bees are contacted directly, they can bring fungal spores back to the hive and infect the susceptible brood. I don't know, man. That sounds like a not
Whoa.
so selective option there. Here's the other
Wow,
thing.
man.
Spores remain viable for a longer time when applied to the leaf undersides or in the evening due to reduced sunlight exposure.
Ah.
Mm.
Oh,
So
and I know something else about bees, guys.
Hmm.
Bees are early risers, meaning
Mm.
they start coming out as the sun is coming up. So here's your timeline, just in case you're wondering. Imagine a grower has this mycoinsecticide applied in the evening, right, to a field. And then bees come out the next morning and are directly contacted by residues of this product on the plant surfaces. What could possibly happen?
sounds like not a lot good. And the only thing that's different in this case is that instead of taking 24 hours, to kill a majority of the population, that it will take up to 19 days, which is fortunate or unfortunate depending on how you look at
No,
this
that
and what
that sounds
viewpoint you're coming
horrible.
from.
That sounds horrible, Ryan, because you know, guys, you always say that I like death, but do you know what I don't like?
Death.
No, I don't like a
Slow
slow
death.
death.
It's like,
I
whoa,
don't like
whoa.
that.
Don't say that. I like death.
But I don't like slow death. I mean, at all. I mean, not at all. I mean, 19 days
Ray
sounds horrific.
Ray
I mean,
Ray
no.
will stand over the entire bee colony with a 1911 and do the mercy shots one at a time if he has to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
dude,
I
think
would.
about it. With an incubation time of 19 days, imagine the spread that could occur, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Mhm.
that is legitimately frightening. And if anything we learned about COVID is what incubation time means, right? And we saw what
Yeah.
happened with a 5-day incubation time. Now multiply that times 4 and imagine the pandemonium that occurs with something that is, oh, I don't know, threatening to the entire fucking species. Sounds like a good
And
idea. Let's get more of that into the marketplace, please.
that's
Mhm.
the thing here
It's
is
organic.
that yeah, exactly. The 25B, the EPA limited risk um, product list is
Mhm.
what is not I don't think fully understood in terms of the downstream impacts beyond just hey, it's safe for people, right? So go out there and spray some clove oil on whatever for whatever. And
Yeah.
maybe that's
Yeah.
not such a good idea, right?
You
And
know,
actually, if
here
you look at it, what's interesting is if you look at some of these, right, and you understand, environmental impact quotients, a really, really cool tool that was developed by University of Cornell a long time ago, 92. They're updating it right now. There's been some recent papers out that have talked a little bit more about how it's evolved and things like that. But if you dump in some of these 25B products into that model and look at what the number is, right? And so there's a range of, very low toxicity to humans, workers, environment, and I can't remember what the other categories are. But bottom line is this: is that in a lot of cases, those 25B products applied at the recommended rates often have a lot more impact, right? As measured by
Yep.
EIQ or even just studies like this that
Mhm.
show that there is not a limited risk, right? It's a limited risk to humans, and that's great and awesome, and we're all for that. But there's other things out there too that are causing problems. So Ray,
Sure.
sorry, you can't use this, or you
Mhm.
can use this,
Oh,
but you can't use, a Celebrin,
yeah,
which
you
actually
can't
only
use
has
the
one C
solid.
in it.
Yeah. Well, here's my thought on this is that okay, you know what was really surprising to me is this insecticide is registered for application outdoors. And when I say outdoors, I mean two crops growing in field production. And
Mm.
you know what's even more interesting? This shit is even registered for application in Hawaii.
Yeah.
How did this get
They
through?
snuck one past the goalie.
Because my question is all right, we have this basically Ebola in a bottle being released
It's
out
gonna
into the
liquefy
environment.
your organs, bees. Get
Yeah,
ready.
yeah, it's gonna liquefy your
Dustin
organs
Hoffman's not
literally.
gonna come save you with his little monkey.
N- no,
Matt
and
has no idea what
so
that's about.
No
we're
clue.
going to release
From a
this
movie.
plague, and it's going out into the environment. And in the meantime, who checked this product for toxicity to off-target, insects? Who checked? And you know, my thought is that with all of the hopping up and down and finger pointing at neonicotinoids, I have to ask, how many bee casualties are caused actually by the products that are not even being looked at, like this Beavis and Butthead mycoinsecticide? How many? I mean, I gotta wonder now because I like that precaution on the label. Avoid contacting bees. However, even if you don't directly contact, my understanding of this mycoinsecticide is that you contaminate the plant surfaces with this product, and then should an insect walk, crawl, fly onto, land on, or try to eat this plant after you've made this application, up until the sun comes back up and kills these fungal spores, that plant is essentially hot and able to kill things. So, what are we doing here?
Um,
What are we
I don't
doing?
know. Speaking of Ebola, let's check in what's going on with the sewage sludge in Utica, Mississippi. Uh, Gosh damn it. Okay, here we go. Um, Deneen Anderson holds up a sign that says petition to stop biosludge outside of Rebecca Rose Flea Market in downtown Utica. About 45 minutes southwest of Jackson. And if anybody knows anything about Jackson, boy, that city is an absolute train wreck. To put it not so lightly, there is an overwhelming amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Corruption in that city, and has been for a long time. Growing up in Memphis, sometimes you would hear the phrase, "At least we're not Jackson," right? And I think that's why you saw that they actually ran out of
Yeah, it's
fresh
the
water
capital
when they had
city
to.
too.
Yeah, it is not a good town to live in. This town used to be a grand place, said Scott Denley, a lifelong Utica resident. The highway left us, the railroad left us, the high school went. We used to have a Bernstein shirt factory, employed a lot of people. It closed, moved to Mexico. But while there may not be much going on in Utica anymore, the residents are still very close knit and protective. When word got around about the potential use of biocides, the whole town came together to raise their voices. all of a sudden it ain't so quiet anymore. Um, Outrage hit the town in recent days over a now-kill proposal that would have dumped potentially environmental harmful city of Jackson waste products into this rural community. It started with a confusing government public notice in the newspaper and grew to a fever pitch within a Facebook group. The notice advertised a public hearing on December 18th, inviting residents to the Hinds County Board of Supervisors meeting. The topic was to speak in favor or against the use of biosolids, known as sewer sludge, as a fertilizer on approximately 533 acres of a 967-acre private property 7 miles outside of Utica. This was the confusing part. The notice stated the property was going to be owned and operated by the city of Jackson. The site will be utilized for the land application of biosolid waste generated from the treatment of municipal wastewater. Cheryl Strong, owner of Rebecca Rose Flea Market in downtown Utica, was sent the notice. She also runs a Facebook group, Real Talk Utica. That is so, man, there is something about Facebook groups in rural America that if you have no idea, I promise 99% of people that listen to us that do not live or have like real ties to rural America have no idea the pandemonium that is rural America Facebook. It makes
Ooh.
next door look like a high school Tinder in comparison, right? It is batshit nuts what you will find on it. And if I recall correctly, I believe it's out of Jackson, the girl that was putting on TikTok the illegal videos with her pet dog. Anyway, I digress. Let me tell you, there are some strange things that go on, and it got shared on a local Facebook group. Anyway. Oh,
Did you
I'll
got some
just
Peter
keep going
Pan, that
here.
pussy?
Real Talk Utica, right? We have one in Knoxville too. I mean, Knoxville's a decent sized city, over 300,000 people, and just Knoxville, you know, concentric. You take into the surrounding areas, it's over 1 million people, and boy, I mean, it is wild in the Facebook groups here. We just kind of found out accidentally about it. And we didn't know what it was. We think they were trying to get it by us without us knowing about it. Who looks at the tiny little public notices? Shit, I do. The more than 2,000 member Facebook group exploded. Members started posing questions about what exactly biosolids are, what is going on with this land, why is wastewater and sewage involved, is this safe for the environment and surrounding farmlands? Others were confused about the role the city of Jackson played in the notice. Why is Jackson taking over private land in Utica? Are they building some sort of waste facility? Is it a dump? I love Utica, born and raised here. Some people may say Utica. It doesn't strike me as a Utica. This is definitely a Utica type of town. I'm going to fight for this little town one way or another because I love it. Anyway, Nancy Tennett's home has been in her family for generations, located on Mississippi Highway 27. The property has 3 buildings. The backyard is 937 acres with areas her family used to farm crops such as cotton and corn. As she has aged, she decided to lease the land to a farmer named Matt McMullen, who recently tried to grow soybeans on the property. He had, once had planned to use sewer sludge as fertilizer. McMullen said he wanted to try sewer sludge because it's an organic fertilizer and much cheaper than commercial fertilizers. It's a real good soil and has a lot of nutrients. It's a lower cost on the farmer. And since 21, the cost of commercial fertilizers is double. So that would be my benefit of it. Harold, an engineer with FCNE Engineering in Brandon, worked with McMullen to bring the fertilizer on the land he was farming. To do so, Hinds County must first amend its solid waste management plan. Hinds County is tasked with the state statute to have a solid waste management plan that deals with not only solid waste, but it specifically talks about municipal biosolids. You have to go through steps to amend that, and any one of those steps is a public hearing. Plan has to be approved by Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, and then once you do that, you have a permit application to land apply the fertilizer, which also has to be done and it is approved and regulated by MDEC. This is where the city of Jackson comes in. The city has a contract with a French transnational company called Veolia Solutions. The company has activities in 3 main services: water management, waste management, and energy services. They take
Time's up. It's over.
sewage from the plant in Jackson, put it through a treatment process, turns it into biosolids, and then the farmer would then pick it up and land apply it to the property. Um, we Let's see here. The ad in the paper was very misleading and not worded correctly, McMullen said. Of course, I've been asked a lot of questions about this since it came out. Rumors and everything from a 900-acre sewage lagoon was going to build. The city of Jackson was going to build a landfill or waste plant. Just a lot of rumors, and that's what's caused the uproar. Speaking on the front porch of her home, Tenhet says she has no idea about the ad until concerned residents and neighbors started calling her. Some showed up at the house. She was particularly upset at the fact that the ad stated the property would be owned by the city of Jackson. I sure didn't like the way the notice was worded. It sounded like they had bought the property, and I thought, oh my goodness, eminent domain, and they don't tell me about it. Um, Due to the confusion regarding the notice, McMillan decided to pull his application for the biosolid fertilizer. It just pissed too many people off. It went ape shit. Too many people have Google searched the adverse effects of the fertilizer, and you can find the bad in anything. Plus, people have shown up to Miss Nancy's house, and she doesn't even know, and they want to talk to her about it, and it's become too much of a problem for her, and I don't want to have to deal with that shit. Even though the application was pulled back by Mullen on December 1st, they held a town hall to discuss more problems that could arise with biosolids, and more than 50 people showed up. Anyway, I'll stop there because then it just kind of gets into the, who's who of it. But I wanted to paint the whole picture of what exactly happened in rural America here. Now, I'll say this. I am absolutely floored that in Utica, Mississippi, they give a shit about land applied biosolids. Guys, weird.
Hmm.
Weird. That my head is about to spin off my shoulders right now.
Damn, Matt. I
Why?
mean, that that is just amazing to me. But then it's also very encouraging because Mississippi was also the site in the 1970s of something horrific happening.
Uh,
And yeah, Mississippi was the site of something extremely horrific happening. And let me just
Oh,
go back on the Wayback Machine. In the 1970s, an entire town had to be condemned because of dioxin contamination. And that dioxin contamination was the result
that's Agent
of
Orange for anybody playing along at home.
mhm, well, the dioxin was, from a waste oil disposal business that also acquired some chemical waste from one of the chemical plants in the area and admixed that waste with his oil because I guess a common practice in the South up until a few years later was oiling the dirt roads to keep down dust. So these guys sprayed thousands of acres with dioxin containing oil. And as a result, I remember seeing this where the entire town had to be evacuated and abandoned due to the contamination.
yeesh.
So I'm I'm now hoping that people they kind of learned don't let anybody just dump
Right.
random
I'm
shit
going to
on the
push
ground.
back that the people in this city have no fucking idea what you're talking about. And
Mhm.
this is what has been born of post COVID. I think again in an effort to try and balance the good with the bad, right? And what came from COVID, I think, is a little bit more sense of one, no one trusts the government. And it's not,
Mhm.
I'm not going to paint this as like COVID was a scam kind of thing, but what I will paint is that the abhorrent ability of the government to effectively communicate anything related to COVID. And this went for both parties that were in power through the whole thing. I don't want to paint this as like right versus left. It is not. Both sides fucking sucked ass. If I recall correctly, you had on one side that it's just the flu, don't worry about it, and then on the other side you had the winter of death is coming. Right, I remember those words
Mhm.
verbatim. I remember Jen Psaki saying that exercise was not. what was recommended because doctors right now are suggesting that no, a vaccine is a better bet. And then, of course, it was you could stop the spread if you got vaccinated, but it turns out that wasn't necessarily the case either. There was so much bad messaging out of it. I think it generated a lot of distrust whenever anybody that has any sort of government affiliation, I'll say this too, any kind of large corporate affiliation, and this is, I think, is what has given birth to populism in general. Any kind of corporate or government affiliation telling you something or putting their name on something, everybody immediately has the hairs on the back of their neck stand up and say, well, what actually is going on here, right? And the fact that that has fucking hit Utica, Mississippi, in a group of 2,000 people have collectively come to that decision and then researched it enough to be able to put together some sort of enough fucking noise to put the kibosh on this. To me, I'm telling you, man, Jackson, Mississippi is one of the most crooked fucking cities in America. This is where Brett Favre stole millions of dollars from the state to build the Southern Miss volleyball facility or whatever. And he stole it. Brett Favre literally stole money from the fucking EBT program in order to do this. That's how fucking corrupt Jackson, Mississippi is. It is off the charts corrupt. But you've got some country bumpkins that are like, man, I don't know. I did some Googling on that shit and I want some second opinions. And then they go after the lady and they're asking the landowner and they're like, hey, Miss Timmett, why is the gosh damn city of Jackson taking over 450 of your 900 acres? And did you see what her response was? Some bitches are declaring eminent domain over my land. It's charming in the most rural America way that it possibly could be, but at the same time, something I feel like that is good growth in rural America. Whether whatever side that you agree on, that's how it's supposed to function, right? The populace should not trust the government. The government should have a healthy fear of its citizens. They call it into question, and then a solution is met, right? In Jackson, this time 6 months ago, maybe someone drowned in 6 inches of water and the noise stopped and everyone went on about their business. And biosolid, or who knows, they may have turned 450 acres of that lady's land into a sewage lagoon. You never know. Anyway, I digress. I in my that to answer your question to me, that's what has me shocked about this. I would expect some smooth talking, toupee wearing, slick back hair gel as thick as motor oil in his hair, telling these people, "Don't worry, we're from the government and we're here to help." And they being like, "Oh yeah, I went to church with him. He's a good one. Y'all ain't got to worry about it." And they said, "The fuck is that? Get the fuck out of my town."
Hell
Sign
no.
me.
It's like
I want to go hang out with those people for a weekend. I'm not going to lie. I will not do the drugs they do, but I would hang out with them. Weeds have been fighting back against glyphosate for 25 years. Researchers show a significant and rapid decline in glyphosate control. This is such a misleading headline, by the way. Um, it's been a quarter century since corn and soybean were engineered to withstand the withering mists of herbicide glyphosate. Oh, God. Initially heralded as a silver bullet for weed control, the modified crops and herbicide companion were quickly and widely adopted across corn and soybean growing regions of North America. In the years that followed, though, weeds targeted for eradication quietly fomented a rebellion. A new PNAS Nexus study led by scientists from the USDA and the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign takes a retrospective look at glyphosate efficacy after the engineered crops were commercialized and massing data from annual herbicide evaluation trials at land-grant universities across the U.S. and Canada. The researchers show a significant and rapid decline in glyphosate control for all 7 major weed species they examined. Our analysis represented one of the largest cumulative measures of how weed communities have adapted to the simplified weed management tactics adopted at unprecedented scale throughout North America. Most of the weeds in the data set showed significant adaptation to the chemical in just 2 to 3 years. Within a decade, weeds were up to 31.6% less responsive to glyphosate, with further linear declines as time went on. Nature did exactly what we were trying to help people avoid. It adapted. In addition to loss of control, glyphosate efficacy became more variable over time. When glyphosate tolerant crops were first adopted, weed control was high in every environment. However, year after year, glyphosate performance became less and less consistent. Anyway, as we this is one of the things that I think is interesting about this that I recently just learned, right? I thought that resistance was a genetic mutation, right? Resistance is not a spur of the moment genetic mutation. Resistance is plants that already have a mutated gene that have likely been around for thousands or millions of years. And through repeated use, those genes with those plants with that mutation that has been there for a long fucking time have had the ability to repopulate what once was the species or the non-modified gene of individual plant species, right? So it's not that this just magically occurred and showed up through like reduced rates. That was what I thought. I thought you ran reduced rates, it developed a tolerance, therefore it could become, some sort of epigenetics, a genetic mutation that occurred. Turns out I'm
No, not at
wrong.
all.
It is not a
Right?
mutagenic response. Um, and so
It's pure.
it's like
It's pure
some
natural
humans.
selection, Matt.
Yep, some
It's natural
humans
selection,
have,
Matt.
genes that are gonna be crossed in certain ways, like, my MTHFR, gene is not the same as some other people's, as noted by a genetic test, right? And so there are certain things that I can do differently to cause me to respond differently to certain stimuli or inputs, right? Same thing with plants, right? That again, through the usage of glyphosate, it has given more opportunity for them to establish and proliferate because the competition that they once faced from their own species and other species has been eliminated. So it's not so much that they just started fighting back against glyphosate 25 years ago. No, this is likely for as long as humans have been around. Long prior to the use of glyphosate, they have been fighting back preemptively against what we did not know, which they did know would be pesticide usage. Fascinating, fascinating. Genetics are unreal. I'm gonna throw a bottle on that one. Uh, and I'll say this that I actually, you know what? We will plug him when we get to the burns. But before we do that, this week's sponsor is who gives a shit? We'll just insert whoever we want. Jesse is our sponsor this week. Ryan
Yeah.
Knorr is our sponsor this week. Hang on, let me open this up. Jay Bousquet is a criminal defense attorney, and he handles everything that you can imagine when it comes to criminal defense, and especially evictions. Boy, that he has found a niche there. If you are a landlord side and you need help with that, how many landlords right now need help with that? Shit tons, especially if you live in a liberal city that, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, I am in a liberal city that had to do I switched to landlord tenant mostly now. I get it. I'd say the demand is high. Where they passed all these non-requirements to pay your what do they call it? Your rent protection act or whatever, I don't know.
Mm.
But where you didn't have to pay, and then all of a sudden you did have to start making payments, and people are saying, "No, fuck you, come get it out of my money, come get it out of my pocket." Jesse said, "Okay, I'm every bit of 5'4", 185 pounds, and I'm going to use my Napoleon complex to actually get it out of you." I'm just kidding. I made that second part up because he had a really funny joke about my granddad, and so I have to pay it back to him where I can. And the only cheap shot I can take at Jesse is the fact that I'm taller than him. Um,
And then there's Ryan Knorr. Let's do him.
I love you, Jesse. And we have Ryan Knorr. Check out Ryan Knorr and his products, Lawn Supply Company. Caveat to that, check out everything Ryan Knorr does. As a matter of fact, I manufacture the Lawn Supply Company products. So if you have been interested in that, by all means, check those out. And some of the cool things that I do, and it's fun because Ryan and I sit down. In fact, we will be doing that soon here in take an assessment of what he would like to see for 2024, and then we're going to figure out how we can make that a reality. We have LTK Trucking and Freight. By God, when I moved from Kentucky to Tennessee, I got into a bad deal with a lease on a building in Sparta, Tennessee, and they sold my building where I had a lease to a new tenant, and they kicked me out of my lease, and there was basically nothing I could do, and I had to get everything moved that I just moved from Kentucky to Sparta, from Sparta to Cookville, and guess who saved my ass? Telly and TK, and they're not their patrons also. They have come to every one of our Dirty Deeds meetups, and just amazing people. And two of the most unreal people you would ever meet, an MD and a traveling nurse and pilot, and run a trucking company that absolutely saved my ass. Shut up, Telly. You answered my phone when I called and got me squared away. So I don't want to hear it, but there's unreal people and an unreal ability to just fucking make shit happen. And I'm just, let me tell you, I'm so honored to be their friends, and I mean that. We got Field Source Ohio. If anybody is going to email us and ask us, hey, I need one-on-one help. I need help with my business. I need help with pricing. I need help with whatever. I'm going to tell you right now that it's not necessarily DeMay's business model, but that is the one person that you need to pay that money to make it a reality, right? And the reason why it's not his business model is because he's working on monumental projects. What that also means is that not only is he going to give you good advice, he's going to give you advice that scales, because that is a one thing that he has figured out how to do, is to take something what would be on a smaller scale and then amplify it times 1,000 to do it at scale, even if that means growing Iron Cutter or Tahoma 31 in the great country of Canada. It's unreal. And I again, when we get these emails, I'm telling you right now, save the bullshit, go straight to DeMay, call Field Source Ohio, and get your shit settled and squared away. If you want help starting a business and you have the cash to dedicate more money for individualized attention, that is where you want to spend your dollars, because that is where you will get your highest ROI. Let me tell you, having someone who really understands business in your corner, fighting for you and helping you avoid the mistakes, is going to save you not just hundreds of thousands of dollars over your first few years of your career, but over a lifetime, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And that is the value that Field Source can bring to you. So if you are looking for help in that space, by God, it sits right here on our panel. Um, I'll save that one. We'll do this one. All Day America, my wife's podcast. Are you into Japanese culture? Are you interested in figuring out what the fuck goes on in foreigners' heads when they move to the United States and they are embedded in the land of opportunity? That is exactly what my wife and one of her friends talk about on All Day America. Literally, they talk about what that transition was like and how fucking cool it is and wild it is to live in the US. And of course, what happens in sexy time. It's like, all right, I'm an American now. I'm married to an American dude. What is that like? There's freaky people out there want to know. And there's some discussions related to, you got to learn the language, right? There's other topics of that as well, too. And it's fun. It's fun for me even to hear those types of things, because it's a lot of the things that I never put into context, and it actually helps me navigate the world a lot more in business as well, too. Because when I work in a lot of R&D settings, which I do in my day-to-day a lot, let me tell you, not a lot of fucking old white guys working in R&D anymore. We've got people from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all different parts of Asia, all different parts of Latin America, that are just as prevalent as dudes like me in research settings. And what's fascinating about that is that if you do start to understand what kind of what happens when a foreigner makes their way into the land of opportunity, is that 99% of the time they see it as the land of opportunity, and they are fucking hungry, and they are fucking hungry to go and get it. And let me tell you, those are the types of people you want to surround yourself around. And anyway, that was one of the things my wife has taught me being in an interracial relationship. It's not just interracial. I would say multicultural relationship. How about them apples? Did I get that right? I think I got it right. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's got it. We're gonna skip the winter solstice for now because fuck it. And then the next one will, well, fuck it. You know what? We will do this. Oh wait, no, because we have that next week. Never mind. Yeah. We're good.
Yes.
No, we don't, because we're not doing a burn and return then. So we'll go ahead and do this. This one is also brought to you by Santa. Fucking Santa, man. Do you want to know what it's like owning a fleet of reindeer? Do they poop mid-flight? How many elves have died in the North Pole labor camps? It's a serious question, and it's one that needs to be explored. Now, coming up, coming up,
It is
coming up.
close to Western China. I mean, kind of. You never know.
Yeah, I don't I know about Tiananmen Square. Anyway, on Thursday. Wait, is it this Thursday? Yeah, it's this
It's
Thursday.
Thursday. All Thursday.
This Thursday, that will be the 21st, December 21st. Get ready. You get to ask Santa all the dirty secrets you've ever wanted to know. He's going to be here. Santa is going to be here on Thursday, and then we'll get to learn. We'll learn what the minimum wage is. Actually, I hear it is an anarchist capitalist society in the North Pole, and that's why it's so successful. It used to be the whole reason Saint Nick got involved and Santa took over was that it used to be communist, and they literally all starved to death, like we typically see communism end. Anyway, good news there. Great. Thank you for all our sponsors that have helped us get through this year. And of course, the patrons too. Patreon.com/burn-and-turn. Honest to God, it's because of y'all that we're able to do this. And we're eternally grateful for that. I promise. And that's why we always try to give back. And we've got a lot of fun planned for the end of the year, not just with the Santa episode, but the year after that, 2 weeks after that, on our end of year episode. That's going to be an absolute hoot. Ray, it's going to be a blast. Boom! It's a little
Yeah. If you
little-
know, you know, Matt.
if you know, you know. Okay, now let's check out this week's. Oh, no. Let's check out this week's Jonas Turf.
Ah.
We may or may not have a sounder. Jacob said, "I bet there are Mexicans doing all the hard work." Doing all the hard work.
I'm gonna give you a bunch of accurate.
Not if they're Mexicans like you,
today,
Jago.
because Joe knows turf.
Okay, boys.
Did I lose my mic? My mic's back.
This one is brought to us by a manufacturer that I don't believe has ever been featured on here, and this one was sent over within minutes of its post on YouTube, and I just want to watch it. It's in its entirety,
Yes.
and I want this to be a little bit of reaction, and also to investigate some of the literature that exists on some of the things that are talked about, and we'll take it from there. Go ahead and play that video, JP.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons for another 2-minute Turf Talk, and this is Myths of Carbon, Part 2. Last week we talked about the myths of carbon, where people say there's plenty of carbon in the soil, you don't need any more carbon, and I think we talked about the importance of available carbon in there. Today's myths of carbon is one of my favorites. It's the one where a lot of consultants run around and say, oh, well, you don't want to put down organic fertilizers or carbon-based fertilizers because they won't work until June. Then it'll all kick out at once and you'll get a flush of growth and disease and all that stuff. If that was even close to true, none of us that sell carbon-based fertilizers would ever have sold the second bag, because nobody in this industry is stupid enough to buy a product that would do that. In fact, what happens when you apply carbon to the soil, available forms of carbon like we have here at Earthworks, what happens is that it helps to warm up the soil and actually gets the microbiology working fairly early. And what we have seen over all the years that we've been doing this is that when you apply carbon-based fertility to a property, you actually go into dormancy later and you come out of it earlier. Take a look at this picture. This is one of my favorites. This is a picture of a client who put down 822 on his golf course. He put it down in November as a dormant feed or a winter feed. And as you can see by this picture, this is still dormancy. This is early March in Pennsylvania, and you can see there's no leaves on the trees. And that soil is warming up to the point where the soil and the turf is starting to green up. So yes, when you apply organic-based or carbon-based fertilizers, you're actually going to warm up a cold soil. You're going to provide quick energy for microbiology. It will not all kick out in June when the soil gets to be a very high temperature. It'll be a nice, steady crawl of growth. And you'll be the first out of the chute to green up and the last to go dormant. The myth of carbon not working until June is completely untrue.
Okay. So that was Joel Simmons with Earthworks, fertilizer manufacturer. They're based over on the East Coast and they sell all organic fertilizers. Listen, first off, I'm not going to sit here and disparage organic fertilizer. I think there's a place for it. It can be used in a wide variety of applications. However, some of the claims that were made in this video, I think, are dubious at best and probably more erroneous in the sense that, well, let's see. First, carbon warming the soil. I'm trying to understand the thermodynamic properties of carbon, and your understanding here on the panel between Matt and Ray is far more advanced than mine between physics and chemistry. So, is that possible in some way, shape, or form?
What did
Yes.
you ask? I'm
He
sorry.
asked. He
I
said.
am.
He said that carbon will raise the temperature of the soil.
It sure will, Ryan.
It's
Because
possible.
Okay.
no, let's visualize somebody applying high rates of a dark colored material to a turf area. Let's visualize that. Literally painting it black and right here, Tully said it, absorbs more heat
Mm-hmm.
and then radiates it back to the turf grass. However, other than that, okay, there's no real special benefit to it. And furthermore, Joel is kind of glossing over this one little point about, yeah, he's saying that his organic product or carbon based product will not promote nitrogen dump in June. But I'm not actually worried about nitrogen dump in June. I'm more worried about nitrogen dump happening through July, August, and September when I don't need it. I don't need nitrogen dump going on indefinitely because what he's saying is that, oh, this won't dump nitrogen in June. No, sir. This is going to keep dumping nitrogen until the sting runs out. It's like we're going to go on this roller coaster and you're not coming off until you're like that poor kid in Problem Child 2.
Demay, I've got a chart here. Is it too soon to pull up the chart that I posted? I know I did that on the fly.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So here's kind of interesting, right? So what we end up seeing is poultry manure applied at 10 tons per hectare and 20 tons per hectare. Let's see, tons per hectare to pounds per acre. Let me convert this real quick. That would
Yeah,
be
2,000 pounds for
four,
2.47.
four tons per acre, effectively, right?
Yeah.
So 8,000 pounds an acre. So that is a lot. of material. And if you look at the influence that 10 and 20 had, is that the soil temperature through the duration of the year was effectively hardly statistically significantly different. In fact, in 2016, it was lower in the two variable rates. And in fact, the higher you went, typically the lower the soil temperature you saw. And then there was effectively no statistically significant difference at all in 2017.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, that's interesting. Now, Pink, go ahead and click to this article here that I sent over earlier, and let's take a look at this. And so this is in a greenhouse setting, gentlemen, where they looked at individualized raw materials, so poultry manure, feather meal, bone meal, things like that, right?
Yep.
And what you're going to notice here in the two different soils that they trialed as a part of this, right? So two different soils, mineral soil and then a peat-based growing medium, like you'd use on a bench in a greenhouse. And they had 5 different treatments. And so that's a factor of 10 going across here. And so what you'll notice is that percentage of N applied mineralized, right? Slide down just a little bit, Pink, so we can see the scale here. So, within say about 60 days, the majority of that up to up over 50%, close to 60% is mineralized, and then you can see what's happening here. It just kind of stays right there. Okay. The rest of it's either stored as inorganic or the rest of it leaches out, whatever happens to it, right? So at that point, it's not a long-term product. And so the situations or the critical factors that go into this, right, is that they're controlling for temperature and they're controlling for moisture. So you can see that it's a much more measured response. In reality, right, in a field setting, we wouldn't expect it to be this flat, right? This is in a greenhouse.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how quickly you get to 60% could be very much leveraged by the fact of warm temperatures, lots of rainfall, things like that. So just
And
take that
I've
under,
got one more
again.
slide
Oh,
real
please.
quick for you here. It's going to be this blue one, and we're going to see what the difference in mean temperature does, right? So we have 77F and 59F and how that influences the release rate, right? So at 59, at 8 weeks, you've got about 20%. And we know, best case scenario, we're going to get about 60% in a constant, warm temperature of total release, right? Now, year 2, year 3, you might capture more of that remaining 40%. And that's, kind of the general rule of thumb that you follow with it. And why it ends up extending out that far is because, well, the amount of mineralization that still has to occur and so on and so forth, right? There might be bedding material in there. It might be bound up with calcium to a certain degree or whatever the case. You might just lose, 20% of it to leaching or gassing off or whatever the case may be. But you can see here how these temperatures differ, and the warmer you get, the more accelerated it becomes, right? So if you are applying at cooler temperatures, you can see where as it, you apply, the ground's frozen, you're going to get zero mineralization. It gets above freezing, you're going to get a little bit of release. Then all of a sudden you get a temperature spike, say, oh, I don't know, 80 degrees, 90 degrees. Does it start to make sense how a dump could occur? It's not to say that it's guaranteed. However,
Time's up. It's over.
you can see the probability of it starting to show its head.
Okay, I don't not only think about dumps, Matt, I also think, uh, can I get off of this roller coaster when I start feeling queasy? That's my actual
That's a good point.
question, right?
Ah,
Can I get off of
excellent.
this fucking yeah, can I get off of this? Because at least I know no matter how badly I go ham with, for example, AMS, I know that in 30 to 45 days, it's done and it's over, right? With something like this, guess what, friend? You might have to ride this shit out for the next 60 to 90 days. Have a nice life. Have a nice life. I mean, that's just my experience with this was, of course, my one customer who decided to acquire some milorganite and put that down. He saw nothing out of it when he put that down in October, and then he saw nothing for the next several months, and then suddenly when it started warming up in May, then he says, "Uh-oh, why is the lawn growing like hell and scalping after every mow? What's happening?" And I said, "Remember that malignite that you threw down 6 months ago or so? It's now coming up. Welcome to the ride."
Mm, I don't know.
Welcome.
It's
Uh,
the whole premise of the video, I think, was to shoot down the myths, the carbon, fertilizer, and some of the things that are perpetuating against them. And I'm sure that the people are selling against this. The things that were a little odd about that were the spike in June and things like that. And I think it depends. That's the real answer is it depends, right?
yeah.
On that
hmm
soil and temperature variables. And then lastly, the photograph that they showed, for those of you listening on audio, it was a golf course in early March and it had bent grass, tees, greens, fairways. And what you saw was all the rough, the taller, high cut turf around the fairway and the tee boxes and the green were all like straw yellow, uh, dormant, and the bent grass was coming back. Now, that I don't know. Again, to attribute that all to fertilizer and the choice in derivatives of fertilizer, I don't know if I buy that. I think that could be a lot more indicative of species, right? In terms of,
Mhm.
selecting bent grasses that, have early spring green up characteristics and likely a predominantly Kentucky bluegrass rough or even tall fescue that goes off color a little bit more. So again, that's the one dubious claim that I'm a little sus on. So
Here's the other thing. DeMay in modern turf grass, and I'm going to say turf grass over the last 5 years. When have you ever seen the recommendation of dormant feeding with poultry manure?
not in the last 5 years, no.
In fact,
I think
what
that's
have you heard about dormant feeding? Period.
that we really in let's call it the Midwest to the Northeast really shouldn't be doing it, um, because uptake is slowed. And now this is the marketing, right? And again, I how much of this and this is what hasn't been vetted out and should be. Okay. So we say, hey, you shouldn't dormant feed with any fertilizer because you could have a significant amount of nutrient loss, right? Whether it be through runoff, leaching, whatever. Okay. The reason we say that is because we know that the plant is not taking up a significant portion of that nutrient at that time. One, because the water demand, right, the way that nitrogen works its way into the plant is severely reduced at say times past. Oh, we'll just call it Halloween. Okay, and precipitously so thereafter. Okay, so I think what Joel from Earthworks would say is that, well, hey, apply the poultry manure, and that stuff's just gonna sit there, right? Because it's water soluble nitrogen content. I don't know the label in front of me, but is exceedingly low, right? So whatever benefit you are gonna get is from that. And those are things, right, that should bear out through research and testing and not just the eye test of what it looks like next spring and not controlled for any variables. So I think that's what I'd like to see if we were gonna make that type of recommendation. How much of that end hangs around, what's lost through the environment, again, to leaching runoff, so on and so forth,
Mhm.
and what does happen right in the ensuing time. Is there any benefit, right, in that early spring period of breaking dormancy sooner because of that product being used? Those are things that are can be said over and over and over again, and whether it's attributed to one study or many, we don't really see any data or have any backup there. So I think that's where it would be beneficial for everybody involved is that, hey, if there is an agronomic benefit to still dormant feed, but choose a different product, going back to those 4 R's, right source, right rate, right time, maybe there's something there. But I don't see any data, right, to support that. So uh
Yeah, there's
I'm not
something about
seeing.
applying a phosphorus fertilizer to dormant grass that goes against everything that I have personally read in the last 5 years, in that there seems to be a concerted effort to get away from that. And I'm not going to be able to draw up every study off the top of my head and show it, but I don't know. Perhaps this is a question we can pose to Dr. Shaddix or someone else, and
Ah,
he will be able to pull that up and take us to school on it, because I'm more than curious as to not just why we hear it, but what the body of evidence says, what happens when you apply a phosphorus source in the form of poultry manure to dormant grass. Perhaps that's
hmm.
out there, and then we can take a look at it from a neutral point of view. Okay, so let's check out this week's birds. Mhm. Yes. Yes, a little late
Sure,
on
got
getting this
to get
out. This
fancy.
came out at the the end of November here. Guess what? All you arbuscular mycorrhizae fungi people, um, that are fanboys. Turns out it is very effective, right? Right. Growth response to AMF inoculation was highly variable, ranging from 12 to 40%, minus 12 to 40% with few soil parameters and many soil microbe indicators. We could successfully predict 86% of the variation in plant growth response to inoculation. The abundance of pathogenic fungi rather than nutrient availability best predicted AMF inoculation success. Our results indicate that soil microbe indicators offer a sustainable biotechnology perspective to predict inoculation success at the beginning of the growing season. The predictability increases the profitability of the microbiome engineering as a tool for sustainable agricultural measurement. So here we see AMF, mycorrhizal fungi, is kicking ass, enhancing plant nutrient uptake, reducing plant stress. But actually, hang on, because it's not exactly as it seems. Oh, one of my favorite personal reads on X or Twitter, pick your poison, is by Andrew McGuire out of University of Canada. Just kidding. That's Washington State University. He's a part of the extension out there, and he took a little deeper look at this and pulled up. J Pink, if you can scroll this up and then go to a second tweet, it talks about keep going a little bit further down right here. He actually puts the math out in front of us, right? It turns out the rate of inoculant applied was the equivalent of 6,691 pounds per acre of mycorrhizae. If you go up to the first one here, is the inoculant was applied at 6,691 pounds per acre. Bulk commercial mycorrhizae inoculant is $15 a pound. Therefore, this would cost a farmer $100,000 an acre. And then it actually shows the growth response here, right? And so as you could see, you really you do a good job of making sure inoculation occurs, that uh, uh, to the tune of $100,000 an acre. Then yeah, you can really get some predictive positive growth response. However, as you came off that rate, turns out weren't quite getting the same bit of response. Again, I bring this up to point out that, okay, when people say trust the science, and this is I'm not going to pull a what is that dipshit's name? Oh, who is that fucking idiot? Um, Organic lawn warrior. Um, so and I'm not saying don't trust the science. However, what I am saying is that sometimes you have to read more than the headline. There's a reason they talk about a body of evidence, right? Because your tagline or your abstract is not exactly what the data is telling you, right? So it's important that you not just read the headline, the byline, or the abstract. Sometimes you have to dive into the actual data and examine the body of evidence, the body of data, in order to determine whether what is being sold to you is reality. Okay. And I think this study is a perfect example of that, right? Remember, science is questioning everything, right? Developing a hypothesis. That's a hypothesis. That's why we have the scientific method, right? The devil is in the details. The poison is in the rate. Keep it all atop of your head. You don't have anything to add to that? I thought that was pretty.
Again, I go back to from a research perspective, are we investigating methods that will ultimately be able to be implemented at scale to help us out of the problems that we face, the issues that arise? And this is evidence that no, maybe not, but it could. I'll play my normal role here, which is to see both sides and to understand what both sides are. Maybe this research, right, is able to elicit other and more pointed and direct questions that ultimately will solve what the problems are and the issues that are going to arise. I just think that, you could look at this in a vacuum and say, "Oh, this is fucking dumb," because it's never going to amount to anything. And it is. That's an accurate statement. But the same can also be true for the fact of, well, we learned that this, and this aren't going to work right now or at all. We need to go a different direction. So I hope that, to your point, Matt, that the science and the scientists stay curious and try to find, not necessarily specific to this, but at scale, issues and find solutions to those issues that make sense
As
to
Miggity
actual
said
real
right here,
people.
cost effective for MJ, but not grass. Got it. I think that's a pretty fair assessment there.
It's a fair assessment
Uh,
indeed.
anyway, that's honestly all we had for Burns, and I think Demay summarized it pretty good there. And we are so far over on time. We're going to go ahead and jump to this week's returns. La 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 la. I am back, said someone. Athletic fields reimagine the potential of heavy duty grass over turf. This is again coming up. Man, look at this. Had a big country. Researchers at Washington State University. I mean, it's just funny. I went from McGuire at Washington State now to turf out of Washington State. Stomping, poking, and gouging fields of experimental grasses to find the toughest living turf for future athletic fields. Working at parks and schools around the state, crop scientist Michael Neff and stormwater ecologist Kate Kraszewski launched a 2-year effort this fall to identify and breed hardy blends of grasses that can stand up to heavy, constant wear. We've got to figure out a way to make a real turf resilient enough to deal with the impact that comes with sports. Backed by the Washington State Turfgrass Seed Association, supported by a $695,000 funding grant from the state of Washington, Neff and colleagues will plant sod fields next spring at Puyallup, Mount Vernon, Wenatchee, Othello, Prosser, and Pullman, Washington, with grass blends selected for their ability to survive and self-repair under punishment. Some U.S. cities limiting use of artificial turf. Neff and Kraszewski want to improve and promote living fields. As communities become more urban and we use our public spaces more frequently, we need grass to keep up with demands we put on it. Grass can help our parks, play fields work harder for recreation and for our environment. Anyway, good work here. I feel like some of this has already taken place, but I mean, this is a $700,000 grant. That's a pretty good chunk of money to throw at this.
Yeah, it is. And if you look at the where the money's coming from and what they're trying to do, I think again it underscores the need for this funding and underscores the issue that without some type of coordinated breeding program around the country, because what works in Washington is maybe not going to work necessarily as well as the grasses that are developed at, say, Rutgers, for example, which is probably the
Sure.
preeminent land grant institution that develops cool season grasses for as far as a breeding program goes. So I'm excited to see what comes of this. Ray, we got to get we
Yeah.
got to get you over here to the States where there's actual breeding programs, and you know, I just feel like there's a lot of grass cock blocking out there in Hawaii.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that because the short-sightedness is that there is actual hatred for grass here in Hawaii. I mean, it is not a new phenomena here in that grass was always looked at in a less than positive light. I mean, you mentioned turf grass here, and people look at you real sideways to the point where Hawaii was the early adopter for artificial turf. Okay, Ryan was the
Mhm.
early adopter, and it's actually going on, and they're just going full send with the artificial turf because every year yet another school athletic field gets converted to artificial. It just happens. And here's where I can see it happening is the catalyst for this is poor selection of turf grass species.
Mm.
Okay? Poor selection because Ryan,
Mhm.
let me tell you, for example, what's a bad choice for an athletic field is seashore paspalum. That's a bad
Mm.
choice for an athletic field. Zoysia grass. That's another bad
Bad.
choice for an
Really
athletic
bad.
field in a warm season area. I mean, not exactly good choices. And what I would like to see is a Bermuda variety that holds up well through all 12 months out of the year in tropical regions and is relatively traffic resistant and also lower input versus the old standards. Because do you know why something like Tifway 419 doesn't do well in a place like Hawaii?
Tell me.
Two reasons. Needs too many inputs, and there's a 6 month part of the year where Tifway 419 does not do well. And our dear friend Michael Woods
Mhm.
illustrated why. It's because there's a distinct period here where there is not enough sunlight and temperatures are too low for optimal growing conditions of Bermuda.
Makes sense.
Especially when we're talking about the legacy Bermuda varieties, whereas I've noticed a difference between the legacy varieties and some of the newer varieties. And that's why, for example, I'm a Tiff Grand fanboy. It's not based solely on aesthetics. It is because Tiff Grand is a turf grass that maintains color, appearance, and density even through that low light and lower temperature period. And it also gets by on very low amounts of nitrogen per month compared to the old standards.
Mhm. And I
So
think
that, there,
that's
there-
the key, and that's go ahead.
yeah, and that's kind of why or where I judge turf grasses is how does it look under lower input management conditions, and how does it handle when it is not in optimal, climactic growing conditions? I mean, how does it act in, say, January here in Hawaii? How does it act? Because I always say any old jackass can grow grass here in Hawaii between May through October. Come back to me again between November through April. You know, let's rediscuss at that time of the year.
And all the more reason that these breeding programs have legs, and that folks, big and small, need to support these research efforts to try and find better and more well suited and adapted cultivars for their local area. So there you have it. Matt, who's sponsoring the end of the show?
Yes.
We're about to find out.
Do we have anything in the mailbag?
No.
No. Yep, mailbag's empty. The end of the show is going to be sponsored by J Pink. Fans of J Pink. How about that? J Pink does not get enough love on here, so that is who's sponsoring the end. Shirtless pics and all that stuff. You can head on over to onlyfans.com/jpink. It's a joke. That's a complete and total joke. I made that up.
None of my sounders are working, so I can't like hit the mute button on you.
See, that's why I was doing it, because I knew you had no mute button. All right, that's it for the show. Do not miss Thursday. Thursday, we're gonna have a ton of fun. Get on one-on-one. Oh boy, I hear Santa is gonna be hammered this year. Like, not okay.
Santa's had a little
out of
bit of
control,
he's been on a hot
hammered.
he's been on a hot one.
Yeah,
He's been
everything's
on,
expensive.
like-
Inflation is up. His stress levels are off the chart right now, and he's been boozing and losing.
Listen, some people go on a 24-hour bender, and with Christmas Eve falling on the 24th, Santa's on a 24-day bender, and we're going to catch him right near the end. We've all been there, haven't we?
Okay, we have. Santa might turn to meth this year, and it could get weird. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, outside of that, then our end of the year show, boy, that, like I said, it's going to be a banger. It's going to be a boomer. Loud noises, thermobaric blast, all the above is in store for it. And shout out to the Lizard Man for the inspiration behind this one. Well, him and that other jackass. Who's the guy in Virginia who just detonated his house or whatever? Again, thankfully, no one died except him there either. Jesus Christ, what a fucking nutbag that guy was also. Okay, we're out of here. Love y'all. See you Thursday. Bye.